Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. We, I guess, are getting used to these type of games. Packers fall 31-26 at the hands of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the NFC Championship game at Lambeau Field. Certainly another one that is very tough to swallow, and always knew, of course, that this is a possibility. I've said, kind of all week long, I thought this was a coin flip game, 50-50 either way. Definitely thought that there was multiple avenues where Tampa Bay could come out of this game with a victory. For some reason, I didn't expect it to be another heartbreaker. And maybe that's weird, right? Because if they lose in the NFC Championship game, of course it's going to be some level of heartbreaking, even if it's a redo of what happened in Packers 49ers or Packers Falcons and their two, kind of blowout NFC Championship games. But surely the NFL gods would not allow the Packers to lose another close, heartbreaking game with a tough referee call at the end and numerous self-inflicted mistakes. Surely that wouldn't happen again, right? But here we are, 3 decades in of Favre and Rodgers, 2 Super Bowl wins, and enough painstakingly stab you in the heart losses, to get by, I guess. Just a difficult game to watch at times because it was Green Bay that was making the mistakes. Give Tampa credit, of course. They played a winning football game. I certainly did not think that Tampa played their best game at all. Obviously, you had the 3 interceptions by Brady. You had multiple missed passes. I thought they played well on defense, but Green Bay had their opportunities there as well. And just didn't think Tampa played their best, but Green Bay was far from their best. And that's, I think, what really makes that so disappointing is that this wasn't Green Bay going out and having a good game and Tampa Bay just being better. This was two teams that both made a ton of mistakes, and frankly, Green Bay had more of them. None more, devastating, of course, than what happened right before halftime and right after halftime. And I want to give you this: 45 seconds left in the first half. Green Bay's down 14-10 with the ball at their own 40-yard line. They're also set to receive the ball in the second half, a prime opportunity to double dip, right? Even if they can't go down and score a touchdown, right? There's only 45 seconds left. I think they had maybe 1 timeout left, maybe 2, but still, even if they can't go down and score a touchdown on this drive, even if they get a field goal and score a touchdown on the next drive, right? They have a 20-14 lead by the time Tom Brady gets the ball next. Or even if they, get 2 field goals, they still have a 16-14 lead. Even if they don't score on this drive but get a touchdown after half, they have a 17-14 lead. So many different ways that Green Bay could potentially hold a lead by the time Tampa Bay touches the ball next. And instead, of course, the exact opposite. The very next play is a sack. The play after that is an interception. Green Bay actually holds on 3rd down. Tampa looks like they're going to punt on 4th down. They call timeout, put the team back on the field, go for it on 4th down, convert to Leonard Fournette, and then, of course, the touchdown pass to Scotty Miller right before halftime. They come back in the second half. Packers get the ball. 2 poor plays. 3rd down, they throw to Aaron Jones. Even if he, it doesn't fumble there, he's still not picking up the first, but it has the massive fumble, goes out with an injury on the play. Next play is a touchdown to Cameron Brate. I mentioned 45 seconds left in the half, 1st and 10, Packers ball. They are set to get the ball back in the second half. What happens next in the span of 11 plays is a 14-0 run by Tampa Bay to make it 28-10 Bucks by the time the Packers touch the ball next. 28-10 Tampa Bay instead of what, I think most of us assumed at the time would be at least a lead or maybe down by a point, at worst down 4 points with, Tampa getting the ball for the first time in the second half. And it just went in the exact opposite direction. And ultimately, a 14-0 run there. The Packers outscored the Bucks 26-17 the remainder of the game. And frankly, as I went back and watched the game, I think Green Bay outplayed Tampa as a whole in the rest of the game, not including those 2, big touchdown drives or touchdown plays at the end and beginning of the half. Now, Tampa ultimately plays a ton different probably in the second half if they're not holding the lead, and who knows how things go outside of that. But those 2 plays unequivocally were what turned this game on its head. And it's one thing if those were the only mistakes. But those were far, far, far from the only mistakes in this game. You had the misconnection between Davante Adams and Aaron Rodgers in the end zone that, took 4 points off the board. A drop 2-point conversion by Equanimeous St. Brown, which, by the way, if they get that 2-point conversion, Matt LaFleur almost surely goes for the 4th down conversion to try to, take the lead right then and there rather than kick the field goal. I would be shocked if that wasn't the case. So that 2-point drop by EQ ends up being a massive, massive play in the game. 2 fumbles by Aaron Jones. One we mentioned already, one he got back, luckily so. You would think that would jog something to say, hey, let's hold on to the ball a little bit tighter moving forward. But no. You had the interception by Rodgers. Was there a penalty on the play? Probably, but still not Rodgers' best decision on that particular throw. Kevin King mistiming the touchdown in the back of the end zone. You had Savage kind of mistiming the play on the 50-yarder to Godwin on the, a 3rd and 9 play. Long run by Leonard Fournette, which Green Bay should have probably held to a 2, 3, 4-yard gain. Instead, it was a 20-yard touchdown. Rodgers and Adams throwing incomplete out of the end zone just had the timing mixed up where by the time Adams caught it, he was, 2 steps out of the back of the end zone. A couple misses to MVS down the field that I thought if Rodgers, throws those a little bit better like he did earlier in the game, MVS has a legitimate chance to come down with a couple additional really big plays. Dropped interception by Will Redmond, which if he intercepts that, there's no Scotty Miller touchdown before halftime. Alan Lazard, a drop 3rd down conversion. It was contested, probably another potential penalty on the play, but that's one that Lazard could have come up with. A couple really long kick returns by Tampa Bay. Too many men on the field penalties, I think twice. Just a multitude of errors that were on Green Bay and weren't anything that Tampa Bay necessarily did well. So we can question the 4th down conversion. We can question the pass interference. These were a litany of mistakes by the Green Bay Packers, and that's ultimately why they lost this game, and that's why it's so frustrating. That's why it's so heartbreaking, is because, again, it's not like you can just tip your hat to Tampa and say, man, they were dominant, and they were so damn good, and, Brady was flawless, and it was just one of those games. No, this is a game Green Bay maybe not easily, but could have won. They had every right to win this game, and they lost it. And has kind of been their own worst enemy at times this season. That ended up playing out again in this game. All right, let's talk about that fourth down attempt that Matt LaFleur didn't end up going for. Let's start off with looking at the analytics, right? So I looked, or ESPN tweeted out the analytics in that situation. Basically, if you kick the field goal there, it's a 9.5% chance of victory. If you go for it, it's a 10% chance of victory. So the analytics say ever so slightly go for it, but it's not by much. It's either way, you're in a bad situation, a 10% or less chance of winning the game. And, either way, whichever way you choose, not a great option. It's like a choose your own adventure. And either way, you'll probably end up dead at the end of the book. If you remember choose your own adventure books, I'm aging myself here a little bit, but either way, not a great option, right? So let's walk through Matt LaFleur's decision-making process here, because while I disagree with the ultimate decision, you can see the thought process, right? So either way, Green Bay has to get a stop from their defense. So if they kick the field goal, they're going to have to get a stop. It puts more urgency in the situation because, Tampa is just running out the clock, and it puts more pressure on Green Bay. They can't just get the stop. They have to get the stop and get the ball back in time for Rodgers and the offense to go down and score a touchdown, right? So it definitely puts more pressure on Green Bay's defense, but they do have to get a stop either way. Even if Green Bay gets the touchdown, even if they get the 2-point conversion, it's still Tampa Bay ball, 2 minutes left, Tom Brady with an opportunity to go down and potentially kick a game-winning field goal. So the defense still has to get that stop. Also, I think the Matt LaFleur's thinking here is that, this is really the only opportunity to win this game in regulation, right? So even if you, again, score and get the 2-point conversion and tie the game up, you're likely looking at Brady going down and trying to score and get either kicking a game-winning field goal, or it ultimately ends up going into overtime where, again, we've seen the situation where Rodgers might not even get the ball back. So you can see his thinking here. If you get the field goal and you're able to hold, which you have to do against Brady in this offense anyway, because if they go down the field, they're going to kick a game-winning field goal, even if it's tied. So you have to get that stop. Now, if you get the stop, now Rodgers actually has an opportunity to win the ball or win the game in regulation. And frankly, if there's no pass interference penalty on Kevin King, or if you want to argue the other way, if Kevin King just covers that a little bit better, Aaron Rodgers has about a minute and a half left from his own 20-yard line-ish, with one timeout to go down and win the football game. The strategy would have worked had it not been for a questionable pass interference, or if you want to again go the other way, just poor coverage by Kevin King, one of the two. It was this close to giving Rodgers that opportunity to go down and win the game in regulation. So analytics say, probably should have gone for it, but not by much. I can understand the thinking by LaFleur. Here's why I disagree with it. One, that ultimately it comes down to, do you trust Rodgers to get 8 yards in 2-point conversion, or do you trust your defense to try to get the ball back and get Rodgers the ball back with time left to go down and score a touchdown against Tom Brady? And ultimately, with the way that Tampa Bay and Tom Brady were converting third down conversions through the entirety of that game, I just don't think you can put that level of trust in Green Bay's defense against Tampa Bay's offense. I just don't think you can do it. And I think you have to put the ball in the hands of your MVP and say, you know what, we're going to get this touchdown, we're going to get the 2, and then we're going to see what happens from there. I think you have to have that mindset there. Also, you have to take into consideration, I know Green Bay struggled in the red zone that game, but they've been so incredibly good all season long. You need 2 plays to tie the game within the 10-yard line. I think you got to do it there, going for it on fourth and then trying to get the 2-point conversion. Instead, they kick the field goal, put the hands in their defense, and Aaron Rodgers, of course, does not see the ball again. And then the last reason I say that is, let's say Green Bay does go for it on fourth down from their own 8-yard line. Even if they fail there, now Tampa's pushed back at their own 8. They probably have to be a little bit more cautious with the football. They may not be throwing the ball at all. It's probably 3 very predictable running plays, and you probably put yourself in a better opportunity to get the ball back in that situation. Even though you'd still be down by 8 points, you very well may have another chance to get the ball back and go down and score a touchdown in a 2-point conversion. So all things total, I understand the thinking by LaFleur, but in that situation, I'm giving the ball to Aaron Rodgers and letting the game ultimately be decided in that situation, and still giving yourself an out even if they fail on that 4th and 8. Let's talk about that pass interference penalty by Kevin King. I'm going to say 2 things that might seem completely counterproductive. And number 1 is that there was a penalty on that play. By the letter of the law, with what Kevin King's doing and grabbing him by the shirt and, basically, stopping his progress, that is by the letter of the law, a penalty on that play. I also unequivocally believe that no penalty should have been called on that play. And the reason I'm so confident in saying that is because those type of plays were not called all game long on either side. Adrian Amos, right before his interception, had a pass breakup that was questionable. I think it was a good no call in that situation either way, but there was definitely a little bit of contact. The refs let it go. The interception to Alan Lazard, definitely a ton of contact on that play. They let it go. A huge third down conversion to Alan Lazard. Crap ton of contact on that play. They let it go. And now on this play, this is the play that you finally decide to throw that penalty flag. I just don't think you can make that call with how the game has been called up until that point. I thought the other penalties were more egregious. Also, if you look at it closely, I don't think Tyler Johnson actually really gets slowed down. I think the outcome of the play ultimately remained the same. I think you had a major flop by Tyler Johnson on the play to draw the penalty. And then, of course, it comes in like 5 minutes late. I just don't think you decide the game on that call. I think based on how the rest of the game was called, you let the game play out because of the other penalties that weren't called. Instead, they throw the flag. I thought it was an egregious mistake. Yes, there was, by the letter of the law, a penalty, but in the consistency of how that game was called, no way you can throw that flag with the calls that Green Bay, frankly, didn't get early in that game that could have, flipped that game on its head had maybe they got a couple of those calls. So hated that call, and ultimately it robbed us and NFL fans of an opportunity to see if Rodgers could go down and score a touchdown with a minute and a half left and a timeout at his disposal and try to get his team to the Super Bowl. It would have been insanely epic, and in my opinion, we were robbed of that situation. One other stat I wanted to throw out there: if you would have told me going into this game that the Packers were down by 5 with 24 seconds left in the third quarter, they would only allow 3 more points and intercept Tom Brady 2 more times, I would have said 95, maybe more times out of 100, Green Bay wins that game. But instead, they still lost by 5 points. Tampa Bay gave Green Bay every opportunity in this game to get back into it. And after those 2 interceptions, Green Bay goes 3 and out. They finally get the ball down 8. They go down, they kick a field goal instead of going for it on 4th and trying to tie the game. And then, of course, they can't get the ball back at the end. Green Bay had their opportunities. Tampa Bay allowed them back in it. Kudos to Green Bay for fighting throughout the end, but you don't get kudos for fighting through the end of an NFC Championship game. Those are there to win, and ultimately Green Bay could not do that. Let's talk some third down conversions. I thought that was a real big key in this game. At one point, Tampa Bay was 7 of 8 to start the game. Tampa Bay's ability to convert on some of those 3rd and longs early really set the tone early and allowed Tampa Bay to get out to an early lead. I thought that was a really big issue for Green Bay and their defense. And then the Packers actually were really good on 3rd down all day, but they left some points on the board in some really serious situations. Obviously, the 2 red zone situations were failed 3rd downs, and then right after the interceptions, 2 failed 3rd downs right after the 2 Jair interceptions. So they didn't fail on 3rd down often, but when they did, it was in the most inopportune of times. I had mentioned kind of throughout the week, and I know this episode is going to go a little bit longer because this is recapping a major NFC Championship game, so thanks for hanging with me. But I mentioned that David Bakhtiari, his injury wouldn't affect Green Bay if they were able to stay within the flow of their offense. But if Rodgers had to drop back 40 times a game, or they had to have a situation where it's just, Tampa knows Green Bay's throwing the football, that those are the situations where that Bakhtiari injury are really going to show up. And that was exactly the case. I think Rodgers threw the ball 48 times, 5 sacks by JPP and Shaq Barrett. There's no real pressure on the interior. It was all on the edges against Wagner and Billy Turner. Those guys struggled. No David Bakhtiari really hurt Green Bay in this game, and they were not within rhythm of their offense almost through the entirety of the game because they couldn't run the football. I mentioned that as one of my keys to the game going in and said something to look for early in this game. If Green Bay's able to run the football, their whole offense is at their disposal. If not, it cuts it almost to like a third. And we saw Green Bay, and Rodgers have to throw 48 times. I thought for the most part, they made good progress getting down the field and giving themselves opportunities, especially when you're throwing that much. But the pressures by JPP and Shaq Barrett ended up being too much, and I thought that was another key indicator. Kind of lastly, MVS, a ton of credit to him. I thought he had a really nice game, even in a losing performance. Jair Alexander, a couple interceptions. Kenny Clark made a couple plays. Wasn't overall enough from this Green Bay, team as a whole, but MVS's 100-plus yard game, the big 50-yard touchdown to get Green Bay back into it early, certainly deserves credit. Hopefully he's kind of somebody that can take a major step from this season, especially coming off that game. Green Bay's going to need him to be a big-time consistent player going into next year, and hopefully that gives him all the confidence that he needs going into 2021. So what's next? All right, Green Bay will have the 29th pick in the draft. Preston Smith, Christian Kirksey, Dean Lowry. I expect all 3 of those players to be easy. Easy is the wrong word, but I expect all 3 players to be cut based on Green Bay's financials. We'll get into a lot of that as the offseason moves along. Aaron Jones, Jamal Williams, Corey Linsley, Kevin King, all free agents. Based on today's game, I'd be very shocked if Kevin King is back with Green Bay. I think that's going to do it for his tenure in the with the Packers. I also think Green Bay is going to have to take a strong look at both their defensive coordinator and their special teams coordinator. You could tell Matt LaFleur was not happy with that play call on 3rd down by Mike Pettin. Just going back to that for a second, I kind of defended it at the time and said, you know what? I thought Tampa Bay on that specific play, it was a 1st down, remember, 8 seconds left. It was about a 57, 58-yard field goal at that time. I thought Tampa Bay, and I think Mike Pettin thought Tampa Bay was going to go for maybe like a 4 or 5 yard out and try to get a few more yards. Instead, Tampa Bay goes with 3 verticals. This was not a Hail Mary situation. This is not like they're lining up 4 guys on the side and rolling out and trying to get a Hail Mary. It was not pure, Hail Mary. Give Tampa credit for kind of disguising it a little bit. They just went 3 verts. They weren't thinking field goal in that situation at all. They weren't sending anyone out wide. And ultimately, I believe the issue here is with Kevin King. Like, there's no reason, there's nothing he's looking at. I mean, Scotty Miller goes flying right by him. That's his man, period. So it's man-to-man defense. Kevin King, your basically 1st round pick, early 2nd round pick corner that you invested a ton of time, effort, and energy in against Scotty Miller on the outside. And it's all his job is to run and play play Scotty Miller in that situation. He doesn't do it. It was a lazy play by Kevin King. Now, Mike Pettin had a terrible play call for anything that was called. Even if it was a quick out, that's the wrong defense to be in. If they go Hail Mary or deep pass, that's the wrong defense to be in. So I was wrong to say that it was I don't think I said it was a good play called by Pettine. I just said it was more on King than it was on Pettine. Frankly, it was on both in the end. Pettine had a horrible play call in that situation, but even then he should have gotten away with it if Kevin King just does his job, and Kevin King did his job at a very terrible level on that play, and I would expect that to be the end of the Kevin King era in Green Bay one way or the other. They are going to have to look at their coordinators, as I mentioned. Matt LaFleur was not happy with that call. You could tell. We'll see what that means for Mike Pettine, and special teams is a nightmare all year long. So that's going to have to be something that they look at as well. They have very little salary cap. Look for them to be actively involved at the end of free agency with, kind of cheap veteran type players. They're going to lose a lot of players off of this team. Again, we'll get into that more as the offseason rolls along. And I think ultimately Matt LaFleur is going to have to make sure that this team doesn't have a hangover going into next season after their second consecutive really brutal NFC Championship loss. You could tell LaFleur and Rodgers were gutted. It's going to take them and their leadership to right the ship and get things going in the right direction, because these things have the ability to spill over into the following season. And that's going to be a really tough task and tall task for LaFleur and this Packers, including a very important offseason for Brian Gutekunst and Russ Ball as well. Last but not least, I just want to say thank you guys. I know I'm new here to YouTube, but you guys have quickly followed along, watched the episodes. Thank you so incredibly much. For any of you who follow me on Twitter or follow the Pack a Day podcast on the audio version, this season's been a lot of fun to cover. I know it's been a really crazy year going through a pandemic. Didn't get to cover the team in person that I would have liked to have, but it was definitely a really fun team to cover. Gutted that they weren't able to make it further, but I thank you so much for following along the way. You guys mean a ton to me, and just you guys following along has made this so much more fun, and I appreciate you guys so incredibly much. That's going to do it for me. Thanks so much for following. Appreciate you guys each and every day. I'll be right back here tomorrow, 365 days a year. Day one of the new off season, and the new season starts tomorrow as far as I'm concerned. So check it out tomorrow. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.